Hi there, thanks for taking the time to watch this briefing presentation. My name's Heather Irving and I'm a Strategic Inspector in the Justice team at the Care Inspectorate. We are currently undertaking a piece of work to look at how justice social work services across Scotland are measuring performance, quality and outcomes in relation to their delivery of services for people on community sentences. Local authorities have been asked to undertake a self-evaluation using a structured template, and this presentation is designed to explain why we're undertaking this work and to give you a brief overview of the approach. So why are we undertaking this work? Well, firstly, this piece of work supports the delivery of the Scottish Government's National Strategy for Community Justice. It aims to ensure that robust and high quality community interventions and public protection arrangements are consistently available across Scotland. And in particular, the Government has set a priority action to ensure that those who are given community sentences receive high quality, consistently available services and programmes. And key to delivering that priority is the ability of justice social work services to demonstrate that the supervision and support being offered to people on community sentences is being effectively and efficiently delivered and is of a high quality. So this piece of work will inform the delivery of those national objectives. Importantly, we also want to build on what we've learned from our previous scrutiny and assurance work within justice social work services. It highlighted that performance and quality assurance were key areas for improvement across the country. We found that across local authority areas there was no consistency in the format of performance frameworks, the type of measures or the frequency of reporting, and some services had yet to clearly define a range of strategic priorities for the justice service or fully embed approaches to measuring performance. Accessing timely and reliable data to aid the analysis of performance was often challenging because information management systems could be difficult to interrogate. We also found that services were often limited in their ability to demonstrate the difference that CPOs were making for people. Most areas had yet to agree a set of identified person-centric outcomes against which progress or change could be measured. And that was exacerbated by the absence of consistent data or standardised mechanisms to capture the necessary information. Some services weren't consistently gathering feedback from stakeholders or people who use their services. So that's why we're asking areas to undertake a self-evaluation of their approach to performance management, quality assurance and the measurement of outcomes. Our aim is to develop a baseline measure about the sector's readiness to deliver on the national aims and objectives by developing a national picture of the collective strengths and areas for improvement in relation to performance management and quality assurance. The self-evaluations will help local authorities to identify development priorities, but collectively we hope they may also point to areas where national improvement and action might be required. By adopting a self-evaluation approach rather than using more traditional inspection models, we also aim to help build capacity for self-evaluation across the sector. This approach will support areas to be prepared for any future inspection by ensuring that they already have a good sense of their strengths and areas for improvement. And this work will also add to the justice evidence base to help build confidence in the quality of community sentences. So what's the focus of the work? As we've noted, this is a national mapping and learning exercise. Therefore, we've asked all 32 local authorities to take part. When we say local authorities, we use that as a catch-all phrase, but we know many of you are working in integrated arrangements. The focus is on Quality Indicator 6.4, which has been adapted from our Guide to Self-Evaluation for Community Justice. QI 6.4 looks at how local authorities are approaching performance management and quality assurance and how well they're measuring the difference that their services make. To support the evaluation, we've developed a tool which will ask you to evaluate how well you're measuring performance, quality and outcomes. The tool considers the organisational capabilities and enablers that are contributing to that work, your current capacity for change, and what you identify as your key improvement priorities. Before we jump into looking at the tool we've developed, it's worth taking a minute just to remind ourselves about the purpose of self-evaluation. It's not meant to be a tick box exercise. It's a reflective process which helps to establish a baseline or a starting point from which we can monitor progress, drive improvement and measure impact. Essentially, self-evaluation boils down to three core questions. How are we doing? How do we know? And what are we going to do next? By asking how are we doing, you begin to identify strengths within your service as well as areas where things might need to be developed or improved. This question helps you to evaluate the current efficiency, effectiveness and responsiveness of the core functions that your service delivers. But to do that, you also need to ask yourselves, how do we know? Self-evaluation can only be as reliable as the evidence supporting it, so you'll want to identify and review the range of qualitative and quantitative evidence that tells you how well you're delivering services and improving outcomes. You'll want to look at performance management information, quality assurance data, as well as feedback from staff, other stakeholders and people with living experience. You might also want to benchmark yourselves against comparator local authorities to get a measure of your practice. And in light of those reflections, it's important to ask, what are we going to do next? Where you've identified strengths, you might want to celebrate success and consider how you can highlight and share what's working well with staff and partners. And where you've identified areas for improvement, you want to develop a set of clear, tangible and manageable priorities and actions for improvement and agree how those will be taken forward. These 3 questions are embedded into the self-evaluation template that we've developed to support this piece of work. The tool's broken down into 2 main parts. Some brief guidance is provided at the beginning about the approach and how to apply the rating scale that's used throughout the tool. Part 1 of the tool has 3 sections which focus on evaluating your approach to performance, quality and the measurement of outcomes. This is the section on performance, but the 3 sections follow broadly the same format. As you can see, there are 4 key questions against which you're asked to rate your service and provide evidence to support your evaluation. You're then asked to provide an overall rating and there's space for any additional evidence that you want to highlight. To support us to map the use of tools across the country, we've also asked you to provide details of any tools or systems that you're currently using to support your gathering, analysis and reporting on performance data. These might be locally developed tools, national tools like the Justice Social Work Report audit template, or tools that you've purchased or commissioned from an external provider such as Outcome Star. The second section on quality assurance takes the same format, and the question on tools asks you to identify any tools you're using or have developed to support quality assurance activity. The third section on measuring outcomes follows the same pattern, with space to list any tools you're using or have developed to support the measurement of outcomes. Part 2 of the tool takes a wider look at the organisational factors that underpin your work to gather, analyse and report on data. It looks at the extent to which you've got a strong culture of learning and continuous improvement, how leadership is supporting your data gathering activities, whether you have robust governance arrangements in place, whether you have staff with the relevant knowledge and expertise to support data gathering and reporting, and whether you've got the resources you need to support effective practice in this area. Finally, you're asked to conclude by reflecting on your service's current capacity to drive improvement and the barriers that might be getting in the way. These might include operational challenges, organisational or systems issues, or wider national factors. You're also asked to outline any priority areas for improvement that you've identified in the course of undertaking the self-evaluation. Throughout the tool, we use a 4-point rating scale. We hope it's relatively self-explanatory, but broadly, we would suggest that not at all means that work on this area hasn't commenced or there's a significant gap in relation to this area of work. That's something you would identify as a clear area for improvement. Partially means some key elements are in place, but there are gaps in areas which require further work to ensure that systems and processes work. Mostly means that most of the key elements are in place. There are minor areas for improvement, but overall systems and processes are working well. And fully means that systems and processes are working well, but you might have areas where you have aspirations to continue improving, but there are no significant gaps. To support you to complete the self-evaluation and to give you a sense of the level of detail and information that we're looking for, we've developed an example of what the completed tool might look like. And this is available on our website along with a blank template. We've also provided a copy of the Adapted Quality Indicator 6.4, which outlines what a self-evaluation of very good and weak might look like in relation to performance management and quality assurance for justice social work. To enable us to collate and analyse the self-evaluations from all 32 local authorities, the self-evaluation needs to be submitted using Smart Survey. The link to the Smart Survey on the slide here is provided on our webpage, and it will be open for submissions from Monday the 2nd of September until Wednesday the 20th of November. At the bottom of every page of the Smart Survey, you've got the option to save and continue, but the questions do need to be completed in sequence, which is probably not how you'll approach the self-evaluation task. So we've provided a blank Word template on our website to let you develop your answers over time, to save your workings in one place and to share it with colleagues. When it comes to submission, your responses can just be cut and pasted into the Smart Survey, and that should take about 20 to 30 minutes to do. The Smart Survey template follows the same order and format as the Word template, but if you've got any difficulties accessing the Smart Survey or any questions about how to complete the form, please get in touch using the mailbox and we'll do whatever we can to assist you. How you approach the self-evaluation is up to you, but we would encourage you to think about a few things. Firstly, who do you want to involve to ensure that you get a broad range of views and perspectives? How much time are you going to need for the task? We've tried to ensure that it's not an overly onerous process, and we would encourage you to keep your activity proportionate to the task. You've got just over 3 months to complete it. Think about how you'll identify and review the range of evidence sources you might have. It's likely that there'll be more than you think, and we'd encourage you to be specific about your sources of evidence. Think about who can help you to pull these things together. And if you discover you don't have evidence, that in itself is an important finding. You don't need to create anything new, just note it as an area for development for the future. Consider how you might build in a degree of objectivity. Who could act as a critical friend to review and test out your conclusions? And also have a think about how you can maximise the value of this exercise. Can you use it as a learning and development opportunity by involving particular members of your team, or is there scope to share the work with colleagues and wider partners? What we would say about your approach is, firstly, be honest. This is your self-evaluation. When it's shared with us, the results of your self-evaluation will be anonymised and aggregated as part of a national report. The findings won't be attributed to individual local authorities, so it's an opportunity to be honest about how you're doing. Wherever possible, triangulate your evidence by identifying a variety of sources. This adds weight to your findings and builds confidence in your data. Also be proportionate. This is a national self-evaluation and the findings will be collated into national themes, so don't do more work than's needed to answer the questions unless it serves your purpose locally. And also be succinct. For our purposes, we need enough data to allow us to get a sense of how things are working in your area and to be confident that you have clear evidence in place. But we won't be publishing detailed information, so extensive responses and lots of local detail are not required. Once we've received all the self-evaluations, we'll analyse the submissions to identify key themes and messages. These will form the first part of a national report that will be published next year along with the findings from Phase 2. We'll aggregate the ratings from the self-evaluation and collate the information about tools that are being used across the country. And those aggregated findings will be shared with Social Work Scotland's subgroup on performance and quality assurance to inform their improvement priorities. No information that identifies an individual local authority will be shared. Unfortunately, we're not able to provide written feedback on the self-evaluation to individual local authorities, but we will share your self-evaluation with your local authority link inspector. They can pick up a conversation with you about the self-evaluation and any areas of improvement that you've identified. The self-evaluation makes up Phase 1 of this work, but a second phase will run between January and May next year. In Phase 2, we'll undertake a validation of the self-evaluation in 4 local authority areas selected by us. In choosing the areas, we'll be looking to include areas that offer a diversity of geography and practice, and we'll also take account of areas who've previously undergone inspection and scrutiny of justice services. The validation activity will include the review of documentary evidence and a range of on-site engagement activities. Following the completion of the validation, we'll provide detailed verbal and written feedback to the 4 areas. Finally, we'll produce a national thematic report summarising our findings from the self-evaluation and the validation activity, and that will be published in early May 2025. I hope that provides you with an overview of the self-evaluation process. If you've got any questions about the self-evaluation or the Phase 2 activity, please do contact the team using the email address provided on the slide. Thanks for your time, and we'll look forward to receiving your self-evaluations.